More than 60% of the products that proudly display the label sugar-free actually contain ingredients that can raise blood glucose almost as much as sugar itself. The trap is subtle. The issue isn't what the label promises, but what it hides. Picture yourself entering a supermarket on an ordinary afternoon, maybe a Tuesday. You grab a basket, start walking through the aisles, and suddenly realize that your attention keeps drifting to the labels. Bright colors, giant fonts, images of fresh fruit, splashes of green leaves, even little hearts that whisper, "This is good for you." None of that is accidental. It's carefully designed to influence your feelings, not just to inform. And among all those promises, one phrase shines brighter than the rest: sugar-free. Two small words that spark hope. If you're trying to lose weight, they feel like a green light. Go ahead, it's safe. If you have diabetes, they sound like a shield. This won't spike your blood sugar. If you're a parent, they suggest protection. This is the better option for your kids. But pause for a moment and think about the psychological power of that phrase. It's not just a piece of nutritional information. It's a promise, a shortcut to peace of mind, a way of silencing doubts. Why does it work so effectively? Because in today's world, sugar has become the #1 villain. For decades, research has linked it to obesity, type 2 diabetes, cavities, premature aging, inflammation, fatty liver, and cardiovascular disease. The very word sugar makes us think of risk. So when a product appears in front of us claiming to be free of it, we automatically place it on the good side of the mental scale. Here lies the trap. Sugar-free does not mean healthy. It doesn't even mean harmless. What it usually means is something far more ambiguous. We've taken out the visible sugar, but we've replaced it with ingredients you probably don't recognize, ingredients that are not printed in bold on the front but buried in tiny letters on the back of the package. That is the illusion of sugar-free, the idea that by removing one enemy, everything else becomes safe. But what's hidden is often more complex, and sometimes even more dangerous, than what has been removed. When a manufacturer decides to remove sugar from a product, they are not simply erasing an ingredient. Sugar has functions far beyond sweetness. It provides texture, balances acidity, preserves shelf life, and even gives that satisfying golden color when baked. Taking it out leaves a void, a technical problem that needs a replacement, and replacements always come with a cost. So what fills that gap? Broadly, there are three main groups of substitutes: artificial sweeteners, sugar alcohols, and hidden carbohydrates. Each one comes with its own profile of taste, chemistry, and consequences. Let's look at them in detail. 1. Artificial sweeteners. The chemical illusion. Artificial sweeteners like aspartame, sucralose, and saccharin are thousands of times sweeter than sugar. That means only tiny amounts are needed to create intense sweetness. At first glance, this looks like a miracle of modern science. Huge sweetness, 0 calories. But the body is not fooled so easily. Our taste receptors detect the sweetness and send a signal to the brain. Calories incoming, prepare insulin, get ready for energy. Yet those calories never arrive. It's as if you rang the doorbell, but no one came in. Over time, this mismatch creates confusion in the metabolic system. Several studies suggest that regular consumption of artificial sweeteners can alter insulin sensitivity and even increase the risk of metabolic disorders. And while regulators say these compounds are safe, safety is defined in terms of immediate toxicity, not long-term subtle shifts in appetite, cravings, and metabolism. Beyond physiology, there's also psychology. Artificial sweeteners create what scientists call a caloric illusion. People believe that because the sweetener has no calories, they can afford to consume more of other things. It's like getting a discount coupon, you end up buying more. Someone who drinks a diet soda might unconsciously allow themselves a larger dinner or an extra dessert. And then there's the issue of taste. Because these sweeteners are often hundreds of times sweeter than sugar, they reset the palate. After weeks of using them, natural foods, apples, carrots, even milk, taste bland. The baseline of sweetness shifts upward. This means that once you are accustomed to the hyperintensity of aspartame or sucralose, you need stronger and stronger flavors to feel satisfied. It's a silent addiction not to sugar itself, but to the sensation of extreme sweetness. 2. Sugar alcohols, the gentle-looking trouble. The second group are sugar alcohols such as maltitol, xylitol, sorbitol, and erythritol. Their names sound harmless, almost like a chemistry lesson you can skip. But these compounds are everywhere, in gums, candies, cookies, chocolates labeled as sugar-free. What makes them attractive to the food industry is that they provide bulk and texture similar to sugar, while delivering fewer calories. They also taste closer to real sugar than artificial sweeteners. But here comes the catch. Sugar alcohols are poorly absorbed by the intestine. This means they linger in the gut, fermenting and pulling water into the colon. The result is gas, bloating, cramps, and sometimes violent diarrhea. That's why many packages carry a tiny, easy-to-miss warning. Excessive consumption may cause a laxative effect. Think about the irony. A candy marketed as better for your health can send a child, or an adult, running to the bathroom after a handful. And while some sugar alcohols like erythritol are gentler and better tolerated, others like maltitol can still raise blood sugar significantly. For a person with diabetes, that hidden spike can undo the very reason they chose the product in the first place. 3. Hidden carbohydrates, the disguised enemy. The third category is perhaps the most deceptive. Hidden carbs like maltodextrin, modified starches, or syrup. Here's how it works. A company removes sucrose, the table sugar, and replaces it with a carbohydrate that doesn't legally count as sugar in labeling terms. Maltodextrin, for example, is derived from corn or rice and technically isn't classified as sugar. But once inside your body, it breaks down rapidly into glucose, often raising blood sugar even faster than table sugar itself. The trick is legal, but not biological. On the front, the package proudly states, 0 grams sugar. On the back, in small print, you'll find maltodextrin. For the consumer, the difference is invisible, until their glucose monitor tells another story. This is the purest form of label manipulation. The industry is not lying outright, they are obeying the rules of labeling. But the result is the same. You believe you're avoiding sugar, while in reality your body processes the substitute almost identically. The bigger picture. When you put all three groups together, artificial sweeteners, sugar alcohols, and hidden carbs, you realize something striking. The sugar-free label doesn't point to one safe category of foods. It's a cloak that hides a cocktail of replacements, each with its own consequences. Artificial sweeteners trick the brain, sugar alcohols disrupt the gut, hidden carbs deceive the metabolism. And yet all of them arrive under the same comforting umbrella, sugar-free. That's the irony. The phrase sounds simple and reassuring. But behind it lies an entire world of chemical substitutions, marketing strategies, and physiological tricks. The sweet taste is preserved, but the cost is transferred elsewhere. To your brain, your microbiota, your insulin response, your cravings. So far, we've looked at the physical side of sugar-free products. The ingredients, the substitutes, the way they behave in the body. But there's something even more dangerous than what happens in the gut or the bloodstream, what happens in the mind. Because the real power of those two magical words, sugar-free, is not only in what they contain, but in how they shape our thoughts, our behaviors, and our sense of permission. The halo effect. In psychology, there is a well-known phenomenon called the halo effect. It means that when we perceive one positive quality in something, we assume that everything else about it must also be positive. If we meet someone who is charming, we tend to assume they are also trustworthy. If we see a sleek, luxurious car, we might assume it is also safe, even if we don't know the crash test data. The same happens with food. When we see the label organic, we assume the product must be healthy, even if it's loaded with sugar and fat. When we see gluten-free, we think it's lighter, even if it's full of additives. And when we see sugar-free, we automatically place it in the mental category of safe. The halo shines so strongly that it clouds judgment. A study at Cornell University showed that people who were given identical cookies, with only one difference, the label low-fat, ended up eating nearly 50% more than those who ate the unlabeled cookies. The cookies were the same, but the perception changed the behavior. Now imagine the same dynamic with sugar-free. The label creates a psychological halo that tells us, "You're safe here, you can relax." And so we let our guard down. The false permission. This leads to what I call the false permission effect. Picture two scenarios. In the first, someone buys a package of regular cookies. They open it, eat one, maybe two, then stop. Guilt begins to creep in. I shouldn't eat more, it's too much sugar. The guilt acts as a brake. In the second scenario, the same person buys cookies labeled sugar-free. They eat 3, 4, 5. No guilt, no breaks. The label whispers in their ear, "Go ahead, it's fine." By the end, they've consumed far more calories, fat, and carbs than they ever would have with the regular version. The same thing happens with diet sodas. Someone who drinks a regular soda might limit themselves to 1 can a day. But with diet sodas, people often drink 3, 4, or more because they feel there's no risk. The net effect? Their appetite is altered, their cravings increase, and their overall intake doesn't decrease at all. The false permission is subtle, but powerful. It tricks people into over-consuming under the illusion of safety. The brain betrayed. But it's not just about quantity. It's also about the way the brain processes sweetness. When the tongue detects sweetness, the brain prepares for calories. It expects a burst of energy. When that energy doesn't arrive, the brain feels cheated. And when the brain feels cheated, it reacts with frustration and craving. It's like promising a child a gift and then giving them an empty box. The disappointment doesn't stop them from wanting. It intensifies the desire for the real thing. Studies show that people who consume artificial sweeteners often report stronger cravings for sugary foods later in the day. Instead of reducing the desire for sweets, sugar-free products may actually fuel it. Everyday stories. Consider Maria, 34 years old. She decides to swap sugar for artificial sweeteners in her daily life. Coffee with sucralose, yogurt, light, diet soda. At first, she feels great, proud of her decision. But within weeks, something strange happens. She can't go a day without something sweet. Her palate has been recalibrated to expect an unnatural intensity of sweetness. Fresh fruit no longer satisfies her. An apple tastes bland, strawberries seem dull. She has become trapped in a cycle where only artificially intense sweetness feels rewarding. Then there's Luis. He started buying sugar-free chocolate bars. Because he didn't feel guilty, he ate them every day, sometimes an entire bar at once. Months later, he realized he hadn't lost weight. In fact, he had gained. His blood glucose was still unstable. What he thought was a healthy choice was, in reality, another trap disguised in a comforting label. These stories are not isolated. They repeat across millions of households. The illusion of sugar-free creates patterns of overconsumption, dependency, and frustration. The modern spell. And this is where the trap becomes almost poetic. The label, sugar-free, works like a modern spell. 2 words cast across a package are enough to dissolve fear, silence guilt, and generate trust. Consumers believe they are making a wise decision, but what they're really doing is surrendering to marketing psychology. The irony is cruel. People are not only consuming products that may harm them, they're doing so with confidence, believing they are protecting themselves. The spell is not broken by science alone, because science deals with facts, while the spell operates on feelings. And in the grocery aisle, feelings often win. When we think about food, most of us picture the stomach, digestion, calories. But in reality, one of the organs most affected by what we eat isn't in the abdomen at all, it's in the head. The brain is constantly processing signals from flavor, texture, and hormones. And few things confuse it more than eating something that tastes incredibly sweet but delivers no calories. Sweetness without calories. A mixed signal. For thousands of years, human evolution taught the brain a simple rule: sweetness equals energy. In nature, sweet foods like ripe fruit or honey were rare, precious, and calorie-dense. Our ancestors learned to associate the taste of sweetness with survival itself. So when the tongue detects sweetness, the brain prepares. It releases dopamine in the reward circuits, priming us with pleasure. It signals the pancreas, "Get insulin ready, calories are coming." The body starts a cascade of physiological responses, all based on one assumption: sugar means fuel. Now imagine drinking a diet soda sweetened with sucralose or aspartame. The tongue shouts, "Sweetness." The brain expects energy. But the energy never arrives. It's like stepping on the gas pedal in a car, and the car doesn't move. Do that often enough, and the driver begins to lose trust in the system. This mismatch between expectation and reality is what scientists believe can contribute to insulin resistance. The body gets used to preparing for calories that never show up, and when real sugar finally arrives, the system no longer reacts as efficiently. The result is a blunted response. Higher blood sugar levels, more stress on the pancreas, and a step closer to type 2 diabetes. The altered reward circuit. There's another hidden cost: the way sugar-free products alter our sense of pleasure. Artificial sweeteners can be hundreds of times sweeter than sugar. Aspartame is about 200 times sweeter. Sucralose? Around 600 times sweeter. Some newer sweeteners are even more intense. The result is a recalibration of the palate. Think about it: if every day you flood your taste buds with hyper-intense sweetness, your baseline changes. A fresh orange no longer tastes sweet enough. A strawberry seems bland. Even a spoonful of honey feels weak compared to the artificial fireworks in your mouth. It's like listening to music at maximum volume all the time. Normal sounds become inaudible. Once your brain adjusts to the supernormal stimulus, the natural world feels inadequate. And so you chase stronger, more artificial flavors, reinforcing the cycle. This is one of the reasons why people who rely on sugar-free products often struggle to enjoy natural foods again. Their taste system has been hijacked. Hunger and cravings that don't quit. But it doesn't stop with taste. Sweetness without calories also messes with hunger hormones. Normally, when we eat sugar, the body releases leptin, the hormone that signals satiety. You've had enough, stop eating. At the same time, levels of ghrelin, the hunger hormone, drop. The system works like a seesaw. Sweetness and calories together satisfy the appetite. But when we eat artificial sweetness without calories, leptin doesn't activate properly. Ghrelin doesn't drop. The body feels like it has been teased but not fed. The result? A lingering, restless hunger. That's why so many people say, "I drink diet soda, but I still crave snacks later." It's not weakness. It's biology. Their hunger hormones remain unsatisfied, urging them to keep eating. And the worst part is that cravings often target exactly what the brain was promised but didn't get: carbohydrates and sugar. So sugar-free products can end up fueling the very cravings they are meant to suppress. The gut microbiome, an invisible battlefield. Beyond the brain, the gut also feels the impact, specifically the trillions of bacteria living inside it, known as the microbiome. Research suggests that certain artificial sweeteners, like saccharin and sucralose, can alter the balance of gut bacteria. In animal studies, these changes were linked to glucose intolerance and metabolic dysfunction. In humans, the evidence is still emerging, but early studies point in the same direction. Why does this matter? Because the microbiome isn't just about digestion. It influences immunity, inflammation, even mood and mental health. A disrupted microbiome can set the stage for a cascade of problems, from weight gain to insulin resistance to chronic disease. Think of the microbiome as a rainforest. A diverse, balanced rainforest thrives. But introduce a toxin, and certain species die off, others overgrow, and the ecosystem falters. Artificial sweeteners may be small doses of disruption repeated daily, subtle enough to go unnoticed, but powerful over time. An everyday analogy. Imagine you're driving a car where the gas pedal sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. You press down, expecting speed, but nothing happens. Over time, you stop trusting the car. You overcompensate, press harder, burn out the engine. That's what happens inside the body. Each sip of diet soda, each bite of sugar-free candy, is like pressing the pedal with no response. The system grows inconsistent, mistrust builds, and eventually, the whole mechanism wears down. Visible and invisible consequences. The scariest part is that the consequences are not always obvious. No one collapses after drinking a diet soda. No one feels an immediate crisis after eating a sugar-free cookie. On the surface, everything seems fine. But beneath the surface, small changes are accumulating. Appetite regulation starts to fray. Cravings grow stronger. Natural foods seem less rewarding. Our insulin response weakens. A gut bacteria shift in subtle but meaningful ways. Over months and years, these invisible changes can manifest as visible problems. Weight gain, constant hunger, fatigue, rising blood sugar, metabolic disease. It's a slow-motion effect, so slow that it's easy to deny. But once the damage shows up, it is much harder to reverse. Up to this point, we've seen the science, the psychology, and the hidden mechanisms. But theory alone doesn't capture the full reality. To truly understand the impact of sugar-free, we have to step into people's everyday lives. Because the trap doesn't play out in a lab. It plays out in kitchens, offices, supermarkets, and families. Let's look at how different groups are affected. Case 1. People living with diabetes. For someone with diabetes, the words sugar-free can feel like salvation. Doctors often tell them, avoid sugar. Naturally, they turn to alternatives. They buy chocolates labeled diabetic-friendly, jams marked sugar-free, cookies advertised as light. At first, it feels empowering. They believe they can still enjoy sweets without danger. Take Rosa, 52 years old, living with type 2 diabetes for nearly a decade. She filled her pantry with sugar-free products. Breakfast included sugar-free cereal, afternoons featured sugar-free cookies with coffee, and dinners often ended with sugar-free chocolate. Rosa was proud of her discipline, but at her routine checkup, her blood glucose was still high. She couldn't understand why. The culprit? Ingredients like maltitol in her chocolate and maltodextrin in her cookies. Compounds that, while not legally classified as sugar, still raised her blood sugar. The label protected the manufacturer, not Rosa's health. This story repeats across millions of people with diabetes. Instead of stabilizing their condition, many unknowingly sabotage it with products designed to soothe their fears but not their biology. Case 2. People trying to lose weight. Now imagine someone not with diabetes, but with extra pounds they desperately want to lose. Meet Daniel, 37 years old. Frustrated with his weight, he gave up regular sodas and switched entirely to diet versions. At first, he was optimistic. This will cut hundreds of calories every week. I'll finally see results. But 3 months later, Daniel was shocked. His weight had barely changed. In fact, he had gained 2 pounds. What went wrong? Here's what happened. When Daniel drank regular soda, guilt and awareness kept him limited, 1 can per day. With diet soda, he felt free. No guilt, no limits. Soon, he was drinking 3 or 4 cans daily. Worse, the artificial sweetness kept his cravings alive. Each evening, he found himself snacking on chips, bread, or dessert. The calories he thought he was avoiding came back through the side door. Daniel's experience highlights the cruel irony. Sugar-free doesn't necessarily reduce calorie intake. Sometimes it increases it. Case 3. Children and teenagers. Children are especially vulnerable to the sugar-free trap. They don't read labels, they don't understand nutrition science, they trust what's given to them. Consider Sophia, 10 years old. Her mother, wanting to protect her teeth and prevent weight gain, bought her sugar-free gum and candy. Sophia loved it. She chewed and munched happily, sometimes finishing an entire bag. Hours later, she complained of stomach pain, bloating, and diarrhea. The reason? Sugar alcohols like sorbitol and maltitol, poorly absorbed and fermented in the gut. What looked like a harmless treat turned into a painful lesson. But beyond the stomachache, something deeper was happening. Sophia was learning a dangerous belief. If it says sugar-free, I can eat as much as I want. This mindset, formed in childhood, can follow her into adulthood, shaping habits that lead to long-term problems. Case 4. Older adult. Then there are older adults, who often face multiple health concerns: hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol. For them, the promise of sugar-free feels like a gift. Take Manuel, 68 years old. He loved cookies with his morning coffee. When his doctor warned him about sugar, he switched to sugar-free versions. He felt proud of his discipline, until his next blood test showed rising cholesterol. The issue wasn't sugar anymore, it was fat. The cookies, while free of sugar, were packed with saturated fats to maintain texture and flavor. Manuel thought he had solved one problem, but he had opened another. The sugar-free label had distracted him from other dangers. Case 5. Health-conscious consumers. Finally, consider the group that is perhaps the most misled. People with no diagnosed condition but who want to stay healthy. They shop in health food aisles, choosing light, sugar-free, or low-fat products. They believe they are protecting their future. Yet by constantly eating artificially sweetened foods, they retrain their palate. Natural sweetness becomes unsatisfying. A ripe apple seems bland, a banana feels boring. Soon, they crave stronger, more artificial flavors. Their reliance on packaged products grows, while their connection to whole, natural foods weakens. These are the people who might say, "I don't even like fruit anymore, it doesn't taste sweet enough." That statement is not about fruit. It's about a taste system hijacked by the food industry. The common thread across all these cases, Rosa the diabetic, Daniel the eater, Sophia the child, Manuel the senior, and the health-conscious consumer, the story is the same. The sugar-free label gives false security. It lowers defenses, encourages overconsumption, and distorts the natural relationship between sweetness, hunger, and satisfaction. The consequences are not always immediate, but over time they add up. Unstable blood sugar, weight gain, digestive distress, metabolic confusion, and psychological dependence. In other words, the sugar-free label does not only alter what goes into the body, it alters how people think, feel, and behave. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more videos about your precious health.